Welcome to Psychic Holistic Spotlight. I'm your host tonight, Josie Way, and my co-host is Ken Demers, and I'm very pleased to say that we have a very interesting guest, Jody Herman, who's going to tell us a little bit about her paranormal experiences and investigations. I know you've been interested in paranormal studies for a while, and when you moved to Florida, you were able to start pursuing that. And we haven't had too many guests that really talk about this. There's just so many, from simple ghosts and catching a ghost to clearing away deep attachments that, have harmed and hurt people in their homes. It's a very interesting subject. What got you started on this?
Interestingly, what got me started was doing psychic development and learning to develop my mediumship. One of the ways that I started doing this was friends of mine helped me working on my fears of spirits. They would take me out to cemeteries. Great way to work on fear, thrust her into the middle of it. But I started noticing, through working on my fear, noticing the different types of spirits. And, some spirits would directly communicate with you, others wouldn't. Some of them, there was a conscious energy to them, and other ones there weren't. And the only way I really found to kind of get in there and learn about the different types was to kind of go the paranormal route, learn about how they do investigations, how things work. So that's kind of what got me started in the paranormal. Doing that type of learning, constantly learning. When I got to Florida, I didn't really know anybody aside from my family, and I thought, well, that was a good way to kind of meet some people, make some friends, and find something to do.
With learning something that you've always wanted to learn more about.
Yes, but actually working within an organized paranormal team too. Got to learn a lot about the equipment that they use, different techniques.
Oh, you searched out a group of people that were doing this?
Yes.
And kind of went on as an apprentice type thing?
Learned from them, yes.
Because you can learn more from a team, and you can also deal better with anything that's fearful when you're working with others.
Well, I think by the time that I'd made it to an actual team, I had worked out a lot of those fears. And this was just a way too, when you come out as a psychic and a medium, people question that, people think it's crazy. Is there any scientific way to prove that I am communicating with a spirit when I'm doing a mediumship reading? A lot of the paranormal equipment that they use can pick up on spirit activities, voices, things like that. So why not try to learn about the paranormal, the equipment, and mix that in with the mediumship? Try to get some kind of scientific proof that I am talking to spirits.
That's always been my question. And you're the best example I can think of it. If you're a medium, why bother with all the toys? And the answer is, you can document it. Because
So people, I have a spirit box. This will, technically how it works is it goes through the radio frequencies to pick up voices. It doesn't stop on a radio station, it's constantly scanning the frequencies. Anything that's in the area, as far as a disembodied voice, you'll hear the voice over the spirit box. Works on ghosts. Can't get it to work on an actual spirit that's crossed over yet, but it was something to try. Is it worth it?
Okay.
If I have a spirit listening to me, can I get it on a microphone so somebody else can hear it?
I need two definitions here.
Okay.
What are you calling a ghost, and what are you calling a spirit that's crossed over? Why aren't they the same thing?
Oh, they're not.
They're not. They're not. They live in two different dimensions. This is the way that I believe and the way that I've learned it. When I'm doing a mediumship reading and I have a spirit come through, this is of somebody who has passed away.
Okay.
And they've gone into the light. And they are in what some people call heaven. It's another dimension. The ghosts that we deal with in actual hauntings, they have passed away, but they have not gone into the light. So they're kind of stuck in a dimension in between here and there.
A lost soul, as it were?
I guess that's one way of putting it. That's not really
They
what I
haven't
would call
completed
it.
the transition.
Well, don't know how to transition.
Well,
sometimes they just choose not to.
Most of the time, what they do is they tell loved ones that come over to help them transition, they tell them, go away, not now, come back later, or go away, because it's so intimidating and so confusing for them, because they don't just automatically remember, how to transition. And if they've had a very traumatic crossing, they're liable to say just that.
Sometimes they don't
stay
know
away.
they're dead.
Yeah, or well,
Exactly.
that's true too.
And sometimes, too, they stick around because of material attachments. A lot of old haunted farmhouses, it's the individual that's haunting that is the person that built the house. They weren't ready to leave. They wanted to hold on to their house.
What happens if you're remodeling them sometimes? That
stirs up
stirs up
activity.
more
It stirs up,
than
yeah.
a normal everyday day.
It does.
Had-
If there's
had that
somebody
happen?
who's attached to that house who hasn't crossed over, they're hanging around to keep an eye on their home. And when you start ripping their home apart, they're not happy about that.
No, they're just
No.
comfortable there.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if what you're ripping apart is falling apart and needs to be replaced.
But I found too that they don't actually see the decay and that it's falling apart.
Oh, no,
it's
it's-
almost like they're stuck in time on what it looked like when they passed away. And you could be dealing with an entity that's been there, 100, 300, 500 years.
Yes, I've heard that there's the sense of time. They don't have a sense of time like,
They don't.
There
like
is no
we
time
do.
except for Earth.
Yeah.
Well, there's in quantum theory, they say there's 3 dimensions. There's 2 of space and 1 of time. So if you think that we're in the dimension of time, the other 2 of space are these other 2 dimensions that we're talking about.
You think about over in England where they see Roman soldiers marching by, or Civil War soldiers marching by, but you're only seeing them from the knees up, so that the road that they're marching on is like 2 foot down. It's, over.
Yeah.
So they're still
There-
marching
there's
on their
history.
road, but
Yeah.
we're different, different time frame, or whatever.
Yeah, there are some people, one guest here used to say that they're in different dimensions. And some of those dimensions, you can actually, one person documented that a ghost that they had thought was a ghost that they had seen was in fact themselves many years earlier walking down the same flight of stairs.
Oh, wow.
That I don't know how they were able to figure it out, but it was a multi-dimensional thing.
Oh, wow.
There was an instance down in Warwick, I want to say 20, 30 years ago, where a woman had her hair in curls and a nightgown, and she went out in her backyard to hang up some laundry, and there was a young colonial-era boy there with a gun in his hand, a flintlock gun, and he was like hunting, and he saw her and she saw him, and they both screamed and ran in opposite directions. So
I could imagine having the same reaction, even if it was a young boy.
somewhere back there, somebody got the stuffing scared out of him. But
It happens.
Well, I could imagine what the poor boy thought of a woman up with curlers.
well, that's what I mean.
That alone.
But let's talk about your toys.
Yes,
I love toys.
I was going to say,
Here we have sea salt, and the salt shaker for dumping it on their tail so she can catch them.
No.
no.
But what do we got?
Part of the investigations is always, I go in to investigate a place and I don't leave the spirits there. I mean, if I'm going in and there's a problem, somebody has called me because they're living with something going on and they want it gone. We will go in and do a full investigation, use all the equipment that we have, audio, video, document as much as we can. At the end of the investigations, I always do a blessing and a clearing. Sometimes I've had to go back and do them 2 or 3 times, but the salt is part of the protection and the blessing and the
And the
clearing.
smudged American Indian tradition.
Yes.
But here's my problem with that. Scott Brown, you probably never heard of him. He's a really talented psychic, medium type person, most knowledgeable metaphysical person I know. He goes into his friend's house and they're having what they perceive as a problem. So he goes in there and he sees this old Italian couple sitting at the dining room table, kind of observing what's going on around them, people coming and going, and they've got the priest there, and the priest is doing their thing. Well, they're staunch Roman Catholics. They love that priest to be there. So they didn't leave.
Oh, I understand.
Gotcha.
It was their thing. That they just loved.
Did anybody ask them to leave?
No, Scotch was
Why would
Scot-
you leave?
You know,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah,
different.
there-
You know,
There are many different approaches. The first time I ever came in contact with this was because I had some attachments, and they came on suddenly, and I didn't know what to do about them. And I started approaching different people. I got names of different people that would do it, and basically, the first person did exorcisms, but they were with a magical component, and some shamanistic.
give us a definition of what you're talking. Magical component. I don't know what you mean by that.
Like a pagan or a Wiccan?
Pagan or Wiccan background.
Okay.
And also some shamanistic, because they would go in and meet the spirit and, so to speak, do battle with the spirit, much like the Old Testament kind of stories. And what I found out about that is it's effective, it's slow, and there are only a few people that know how to do it. So it takes forever, and if you want to be rid of a problem, it's so much easier to call in the angels and have them assist you.
Well, I was remodeling a house right after I bought it. And strange things started happening. So at a certain point, I was going to a thing Friday night, and I asked what's going on with that, and the answer came back from whoever they were channeling through was that I had somebody there, but I knew people that could take care of it. So I got Lynn Kent, who was our guest last week. And she came in, and I was a young Indian boy that had been shot by an accidental deer hunting accident by a white man 200 years ago. And he was just very defensive that he had been living in this house for 50 years. And Lynn called in his parents, and they took him to the happy hunting ground. Very simple in that instance.
Well, after this fellow, he moved to the Midwest, so I had to find someone else. I couldn't just rely on those techniques. So at that point in the church, I was asking everybody, and you recommended...
Spiritualist church.
Yes, spiritual church. You recommended that I try the shamanic approach with Linda Hogan and Kendra Bond. So I did, and which is beneficial. But the approach that you use is yet a different approach, which mixes in the best of a lot of other approaches.
As far as spirit attachments, I think it's a little bit different from what I do. I do think an exorcism's a little bit of overkill for removing a spirit attachment. When I hear exorcism, I'm thinking an evil entity, demonic.
Oh, it was.
satanic. Okay.
I think at this point we should point out that there are some spiritual entities that are like little bugs, and then all the way through equal to us, and up into the Einstein, and up into the Christ level, and up into whatever. Just because they're in spiritual form doesn't mean that they're negative. They're highly,
Correct.
some of them are, the masters that we would like to deal with. So
Yeah.
that there's a wide variety. And basically, like energy attracts like energy. So it's like where we would tend to say a prayer to an angel or to the Christ or the Buddha or whoever, that's the kind of energy you're going to draw in. Some of these fundamentalist churches who dwell on the negative coming into them and protecting, they're putting out a negative energy, so that's what they're going to draw in my belief.
Yes.
It is possible to encounter that, even if you're not drawing it in. But it could be
hospitals especially.
it can be based on childhood fears and things, things that were never explained when you were a child. So those things show up, and giving you an opportunity to deal with them at that later time.
Yes. Again, though, everybody has a different method of doing something. The method you chose was the shamanic and the pagan and Wiccan. And I think everybody, regardless of their beliefs, has a different way of doing things. It's finding what works for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes the simplest and easiest method. If that works, it works. But yeah, I am big on calling in the angels, spirit guides.
Yeah, that's what I do now.
I've spent weeks trying to clear houses and just not really able to get the energy cleared. And I remember leaving one in Florida going, this just isn't, something's not working. Like, I just can't get it. Asked my spirit guides if they could go back and take care of it within minutes. Went back in the house and it was fine. It's like, wow, is it really that easy to just ask them to go and remove that bad energy? Sometimes it is.
They got to know they're being asked first.
You have to directly ask. And remember to thank them.
A funny story, I remember a friend of mine who's some kind of therapist, they were pretty good down Newport area, and they were working with a woman who was having all kinds of problems, and she was doing this thing, I can't remember what it was now, and all of a sudden, a little leprechaun type guy pops out of her.
Wow.
And she's talking to it, and she says, okay, would you please sit there? So this guy's sitting there with his feet not even reaching the floor, and she calls in her workmate. What do we do with him? They didn't want to go back to the woman because he was causing her problems, but they didn't know what to do with this little.
Sometimes it's as simple as asking him to leave.
Yeah, so they asked where he was
Get out
from,
and
they
don't come
said,
back.
"Go back." And that's what he did. But it was like she was dumbfounded.
Yeah, I would be too.
I don't think there'd be anybody who wouldn't be surprised at something like that.
Yeah, well,
But
fortunately, she has the ability to see it, but yeah.
There's many more things that occur in the world of life and spirit than we have the capacity to understand.
That is true.
What always fascinates me is like the UFO type stuff. Do you know what the Moffat lights are down in Moffat, Texas? These lights that come up out of the ground, and they've been seeing them for hundreds of years in the mountains and that. That's just another level of spiritual intelligence that lives there. Joe Pagano was up in the mountains up in New Hampshire, and he was hiking with another guy, and he could see this light coming down through the trees, a purple ball. And it came down through, and it hovered over his head for 2 or 3 minutes, and then it just ambled off again. Wow. It was like the size of a basketball, only it was purple energy, and it was just in its own realm.
Yep.
It's just another form of...
No harm to anyone.
Yeah, it was another form of earthly intelligence is the only thing I don't know how to describe.
And it does seem to be that these things are growing more and more. Like it's happening more and more.
Yeah, well,
I think we're becoming more aware of, we used to be aware of them, and we're coming back to the point where you hear people talking about them, so when you see them, you understand what it is. There's an acceptance of it. And not
now, when someone calls you to come in, though, it's usually because they're having a problem.
Yes.
And we want the problem to go away.
Yes. And it's usually because somebody is scared. Something's happening in the house. They want to know what's happening. They're in fear for their safety, the safety of their family, and they want to know what's going on, and then they want it gone.
Now, if somebody wants to use toys, what are they? What do they cost? I wouldn't begin to know where to buy this stuff.
Well, this is just a small sampling of some of the equipment that you use. Normally, I would set up a 6 or an 8 camera DVR system. That would be the video surveillance.
Okay.
It's interesting that you spend more money on the video surveillance hoping to get something. 98%.
That's the least effective.
Yeah. Well, 98% of the evidence you get is actually EVP, so it's audio.
Voice audio.
Yes,
Okay.
and that's, I mean, one little voice recorder.
And that's just a
It's a digital voice recorder.
Walmart type voice recorder.
Yes.
And it might cost 20, 30, I don't know, that looks like a good
$40,
one.
$50.
Okay, $40, $50.
Yep, and most of the evidence is caught on that. One of the interesting things we started doing is when we would go in to do a setup, and every investigation is unique, and every investigation I learned something new. One investigation we went in, we actually tried to catch the homeowner lying to us. It was like they were telling one group one story, another group another story, and it's like we're comparing notes like, all right, let's start a list of what's not lining up. So we decided the next day to go in, and what we did was each of us, instead of carrying our digital recorders, planted them in a room. So every room in the house had a digital recorder. Well, we thought we were going to catch the homeowner conspiring with the other people and lying to us. What we actually found out is by doing that, we caught more evidence on those recorders during our tech setup when we were actually setting up the cameras and the equipment than we did during the actual investigation.
Oh,
Now-
that's funny.
You, as a medium, when you walk into that room, wouldn't you be able to see or hear them?
Yes.
So you'd know where to put it to start with?
You would. I tend to not, you get to the place and normally there's a team walkthrough. I don't want to hear the homeowner's stories. I don't want to know where the activity is. I would not go in and do that.
Okay.
So after they did the walkthrough, then we would go in and do the tech setup. And because I'm a medium, but I'm also a very technical person.
So you were turning off your mediumistic stuff and just doing the electronic stuff?
Well, no, I would stop that and go do the electronics. And of course, as I'm in there, I'm picking stuff up.
Okay.
So that's where I knew where to put a camera. Or,
Okay.
you know, the homeowner says something
makes
always
sense.
happens in this corner, but I'm pointing a camera the other way. And the team is like, well, why are you pointing it over there? We need it over here. And I'm like, no, we need it over here.
Or two, one to make you happy,
Yeah.
one to make them happy.
But like I said, you know, you learn something from every investigation. So every investigation's a little different. Cameras, video cameras, audio recorders, all part of every investigation. You know, these ghost shows you see that they actually do what they call as sweeps. So they'll go through and do an EVP sweep. Well, we stopped doing that. We started planting our recorder so we could record the entire time.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, video is running, audio is running. We'd walk in there with cameras. We do EVP sweeps, but the recorders are already in there, so we can do other things while we're doing that. One of my favorite tools is a K2 meter. What this does is it actually measures the level of EMF, electromagnetic frequency. When a spirit or a ghost is near this, the lights will light up. And you can see right now it's just the green one, but it will go all the way over.
Why don't you ask somebody to step in so it'll light up?
Is there anybody around?
I don't know, you're the medium.
Basically, we just call the angels in, so I don't know that you know, what you're going to pick up with angels.
I don't know if
we
they'll
pick them
anything
up.
But we can leave it in. I have an interesting story about this. Had this for a while, and actually when I was moving to Florida, a friend of mine made the trip down, and you know, anybody that's going to be in the car with me for 2.5 days in the pouring rain deserves a little gift when we get to Florida. So I had made a reservation at Casadega, which is one of the spiritualist camps, to spend a night in the so-called haunted hotel. We got there, and it turns out we were the only people booked into the hotel, and the people that run the hotel, they lock up at 5 o'clock and leave. So it was basically the two of us in a hotel by ourselves, like really kind of nervous. We did a little bit of investigating that night in the hotel, and the first time that I'd ever actually gotten a spirit to set this K2 meter off was in that hotel, where there was a lot of spirits around, and I asked one to come over and touch this. And I had kind of had it out like this, so the other person could see. And instead of actually touching that, they touched my arm.
Oh.
And I could feel, and the meter went off. So that was pretty interesting for the first time that happened. Several times since I've gotten spirits to set it off.
Interesting experience, right?
Oh, it was. And of course,
Well,
it's like,
it was
oh my God, it's
fun.
going off. This is great. This never happened.
It was fun for them too.
Oh, it was. And he kept doing, like, touching my arm and pulling it away, and touching my arm and pulling it away. It was pretty neat.
I had taken an electrician friend of mine to a circle, right?
A development circle?
No,
Crop circle?
at the
A fire
bookstore,
circle.
where there's a medium there and there's a group of people and he's going to give everybody's readings.
Readings,
Oh,
okay.
like a
okay.
gallery.
A gallery.
A gallery. So my friend's father had passed away, and I was good friends with his father. And I so wanted his father to come in. And I'm thinking about his father, and I'm hoping him, and all of a sudden, I felt him come right through my head and right out my stomach.
Like he actually passed through your
He
body?
passed through me. And I said to the guy, Tony, I says, he's here. And he got insulted that I would try and say something to him that the guy was here. He says, I know he's here. And as it turned out, he came through and said he had been far away, and I reached out and grabbed him and brought him.
Oh, wow.
Don't
I've never
ask-
heard of anything like that.
Well, neither have I, but I experienced it.
It can
But
happen.
But the touching part was,
Yeah.
it's there.
Well, what carried him was the caring that you had for him, because you cared about him,
Really nice guy, yeah.
you know, and that's
I
what
wanted
drew him.
I wanted him to kind of interact with his son, who was, 40, 50 years old. So it was kind of interesting.
Cool, very cool. See, we all have these experiences and stories to tell, and
Another one that I like is kind of related to your stuff. When we first started doing the show, probably 15 years ago, we've been doing the show for 21 years. So maybe 5 years into doing the show, a couple of us went down to around New London. There was about a 15-year-old boy who knew his mother, and he had gargoyles who would come into his house on a normal basis. He had names for different ones. One was Toofy and one was this and whatever.
Oh, wow.
So he's in his bedroom and we come walking in with his mother and we ask him, is there anybody here? He says, yeah, Toofy's up in the corner, just kind of perched. Right? So I went walking up and there's a big cold, I could feel a big cold spot. So it'd be nice to have the toy.
exactly. And this would have gone off. Yeah,
But it was,
something was there.
he just asked, the mother had, gargoyles are basically for protection of children. And she had asked that they be gargoyle protectors for her child. That's why he had like 4 or 5 of them that kind of hung around him.
Oh, it's pretty cool.
Well, they're for homes as well, you know.
Yeah, well, she didn't have a castle. Just a little ranch house or trailer.
I think of Ghostbusters every time I hear gargoyles.
Yeah, different though.
You know, I want to say thank you, because we only have a minute left, and for sharing some of your interesting stories about paranormal research and investigation. I want to do another show so that we can talk about more details and more experiences. Thank you for joining us on Psychic Holistic Spotlight. If there's one thing you would like people to know about paranormal experiences, is there one thing that you could tell our clients?
The one thing that I want people to know is not to be afraid. Showing fear gives them energy. Ghosts and spirits, they can't hurt you. They can't harm you, and you can ask them to go away. If they're in your home, it's as simple as asking them, please leave.
Because you're in physical body, you have more energy and more power than they do.
Exactly.
So, use it.
Thank you.
Ta-da.